All right, everybody. Good evening. This is what is it today? Friday, August 16th. I
Yeah.
am your host, Don Irvine, joined by David Shepard. We're two of the three regulars. Our guru Dwight Patel is on vacation, and he has entrusted his beloved show to us, of all things. So hopefully we don't mess this up too badly. Hopefully you'll enjoy it while we do. We don't have the opening because I think Dwight has it on his computer. So his nice little opening montage will not be available until he gets back or unless he happens to send it to me while he's away. But I think we're going to be fine. I think we'll survive. We may not have as many off the beaten path topics and whatnot, but
Yeah.
so David, you and I were just talking about it, and we might as well continue this conversation a little bit, and we can get into some other things. We were just talking about the metro system, the purple line, and you were mentioning the silver line. Yeah, it's like I don't know. I don't know if you've been around the country and you know been on other light rail projects or whatnot. Uh, you know, I'm kind of a rail fan in general.
Yeah.
I think it's a kind of a neat thing, but I quickly learned that with subways and particularly with light rail, uh, this is a massive boondoggle, as you were mentioning. It's just a massive spend
Yeah.
by the government. The users of the system don't even have a clue really. I think as they may complain about high fares in some of these cases, but they have no clue what it costs to really run the system because it's just stuffed full of personnel and high costs and
Yeah.
everything like that. So it's one of those deals where greetings, Craig. So
Well,
the anyway, go ahead.
I mean, the economics of it really doesn't really work because, people have cars, people have different schedules now. A lot of people work at home. It's very costly in terms of salaries that they're paying, the upkeep, safety records. It's just a lot of problems. I don't know if it can be fixed, but every time they might have an opportunity to fix it, they do dumb things like continue to expand the metro. I don't know why they had to keep expanding it when they have enough problems really with the mileage that they already have, the amount of miles of track that they already have. But the best transit system I ever was on was in San Francisco, the cable cars. I love the cable car. I was going down one of these major hills there in San Francisco, and then I'm holding on, and then a train comes right up by me. That was really cool. The Washington Metro system I've been riding for 30 some odd years, probably more than that actually now. Um, I'm not a regular rider anymore, but I always thought it was a boondoggle. I always thought that it was poorly managed. And but then again, they've got us kind of in a tough spot where, like you pointed out earlier, it is needed. It does serve a value and a purpose, but at the same time, you don't want to just keep pumping more money into it. Um, but the last ride I on the metro was pretty good. I didn't have to wait too long for a train. They got me right there, got out quick, and that was fine. But the other thing is now that so many people are working from home, teleworking, that's the other thing about mass transit. It almost makes now less economic sense. And I guess at some point the federal employees have come back, but for a while there, you could just work from home. So you really wouldn't need to even go in and use it. Um, but people a lot of times talk about they criticize government management. A lot of times people used to say when I was coming up and when you were coming up in politics, we'd always compare it to the post office. Look how they run the post office, blah, blah, blah. Actually, I think the post office has gotten pretty decent. When I think of government or socialism or government mismanagement, I think of the Washington Metro Transit Authority. That's what I would think of in terms of poorly running things. But I don't know if you remember, but they've had a number of scandals, and a lot of these just sort of got shoved under the rug. One thing is, I remember when you'd leave the metro, you could pay with cash to park because you'd park and you'd give them cash and they give you change. They had to stop doing that. And my understanding is that the accounting practices were so poor that, and this was what, the early 2000s, that they think a lot of money went into pockets. So they stopped doing that. If I had more time, I really wish someone would do a book just on the whole Washington Metro system, all these scandals throughout the years. It's sort of been kind of covered up, and also the origin of it, the PR of it. When I was a kid, I was always told we have the best metro system, or the cleanest, the best, and maybe there's some truth to that. But I just remember it was like it's kind of like this great selling point that they would push on people. Like Fairfax County has great schools, and we have a wonderful metro system. And it was just one of the things that they would tell us, which I don't know if it was ever anyone ever really dug deeply into that. But I've never been on the New York subway, and I hear that's horrible. So that's probably even worse than the Washington Metro Transit Authority. I've been on Philadelphia's, and I've been on the BART, the system there in the Bay in San Francisco, and that wasn't bad. And like I said, I love the cable car, but our Paul Wyrick, I know, was big into trains and sort of mass transit. So, but I think they probably would have been better off not building the expansion, but try to get people to use buses. Buses, I think, would be more economically efficient. So if you got people doing buses and you can move buses through, that probably would be better than the rail, because with the rail, it's just a lot of construction taking up a lot of space. So anyway, that's my thought on the metro.
Yeah, no, lots of good points there. I mean, so you know, for the parking lot scandal, my
Yeah,
recollection is that yeah, when they did an audit, I guess is when they discovered this, right? They
yeah,
went through there. I I thought I thought they jailed or did something with a bunch of people, employees that were caught
maybe
with
they
their hand,
did.
caught with their hands in the till. But so
Yeah,
they
maybe
went.
they
They that's why they went to a cashless system there, for
did.
which
Yeah,
the world is very much a cashless system now
yeah,
anyway. But yeah, but you
yeah,
used to be able to use cash a lot more in Metro, and
yeah.
now the systems are, they've even, I don't know how many stations, or I think they tried to do Apple Pay and things like that, and try to find ways of making convenient. One of the other points there too is just with after the pandemic, uh, getting people to go back to mass transit has been very difficult. The
Yeah,
trains are very expensive to operate. The whole system is expensive to operate,
yeah,
and and it does, and they have been spending millions of dollars on repairs at the stations. A lot of the stations out my way have been closed for a number of months. So, over time, while they repair the stations, all the platforms and things like that. There was just like a lot of things. There's a lot of deferred maintenance that only got more expensive because they deferred the maintenance, but then
yeah,
became a safety issue. So they had to finally get around and do something about it.
yeah,
Uh, so, but they don't have the revenues really to cover all of that. Uh, but it is an expensive, and our system, I believe, was designed, part of it, at least, I guess, at least the cars, they decided, they took a look, they were looking at the BART system, and they liked what BART had done. And so they were trying to, they thought, oh, we'll have cars that are something like BART,
mm,
if we can. And some of those cars were more problematic. BART's an interesting system when you're on there, though, too, because they do have a lot of those seats that face each other. So if you're in a
mm,
group, you can face each other. I think they have
yeah,
more room for bikes and stuff like that. Uh,
yeah,
but I think BART was far more expensive to run, to ride than the Metro. Metro just ran into this situation. It's like, you know, they wanted to appeal to the commuters. They want to get them off the roads, but they're also caught in that whole thing of, workers, just your cleaning people and whatever, the other people that you don't necessarily see all the time, and get them, find them relatively inexpensive transportation. I don't, they had it for a time. I don't even know if they still do this. They may not do this under these conditions. They did a lot of late night. They extended the metro hours at a
mm,
flat rate. for people who were partying a little hard, in DC. They have
Mm.
had flat rates, I think, after baseball games and some other
Yeah.
sporting events. They would play late overnight, but a lot of times too they would make the teams would have to actually pay
Yeah.
for the extra hours to do that.
Yeah. I
But,
thought that was
but
odd, kind of. I thought it was kind of odd to make them pay, huh? Because you think if it's a public transit, I mean,
yeah,
you're paying.
yeah, I mean, yeah. If you think about it that way, it's like, why are
Yeah.
aren't they already taxpayers paying for the
Yeah, I know.
system?
Yeah. Why are you making them pay for
Why are
that?
you
So
making them do
I
that?
agree. But
But
it was poorly run.
yeah, so one of the things, you know, things that make the system expensive in terms of the build out, and was that so out in Silver Spring, where I grew up. So they made a decision when they were building the line out there, is that Georgia Avenue is a major thoroughfare.
Mm.
Just lots of traffic. You can only imagine, the traffic in the 19 mid 70s when they were putting this thing together, early 70s, versus traffic today. Like everything else, it's increased exponentially. Even with the metro, it's increased exponentially.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to disrupt the traffic during rush hour while they were building the system. So they had to spend millions of dollars. That cost millions and millions of dollars and extra to actually build the tunnels there, because it turned out on Georgia Avenue, the stretch that goes out there that takes you into Silver Spring, was bedrock, and they had to actually drill deeper to go
Mm.
beyond that, so that they wouldn't disrupt the surface, which also resulted in, I think, is the Forest Glen station and the Wheaton station, particularly for, I think, Forest Glen. They're extremely deep. So
Mm.
if you've been to if you've been to DuPont Circle or
Yeah.
the zoo, there's a pretty long escalators in there.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
very similar to that. I think Forest Glen actually may be the longest in the system. I can't remember. I have to look it up. It,
I remember that one.
there's some place you can go and find on the web, and I think Forest Glen may be the longest escalator in the system because
Wow.
how deep, the tunnel is in there. But
Yeah.
so they just had all these expenses. You're right. I think the buses are, for our country, I think that's a more efficient thing. I noticed the other day when my wife and I went out to go pick up some food, that in Gaithersburg, by the Rio area, uh, they have dedicated bus lane.
Yeah.
Um, and we don't see a whole lot of those, but
Yeah.
but I think it's obviously it's not going to be used all the time by the buses in terms of that, in the sense of there's not going to be buses constantly going there. But I mean, if it's like AM and PM rush, if you have a dedicated lane, you can move people through there a lot faster, as long as the rest of the traffic on the road isn't impeded as well.
Yeah.
Is the road big enough to handle a bus lane and the regular traffic lanes? If you can do that, that's fine. I think they're trying to build, they've been talking about building some bus thoroughfare kind of a thing up by here by 270 or whatever. And I'm thinking, like, I don't know how this is going to work. I just think this sounds like it's going to be a lot of money. And considering the state of mass transit and ridership, I don't
Yeah.
know if it's economical. I have a
Mm.
big problem with light rail because it's set up on a different platform, in the sense of it's kind of cool. I mean, they run different kind of cars there, and they run a different route. But in most places that I've been to, the light rail is kind of an honor system.
Mm.
There's actually not a fare gate. You're supposed
Mm.
to buy a ticket, get on the train, and then if you're approached by a transit officer, you show them your ticket or your monthly pass. But
Okay.
all the ones I've been in, I've talked in, I've been in California and St. Louis, Baltimore, uh, Minneapolis. It's been interesting about the enforcement. Phoenix, um,
Mm.
there's not a lot of, and it's very sporadic. I was at an NRA convention, I don't even know how many years ago, in St. Louis, and I take the light rail over to the convention center area, and one day, finally, transit police with this train full of people started checking everybody's, tickets,
Mhm.
and there were people who didn't have a ticket. So I
No.
don't. I You can get fined right away, but though I think the idea was that they would say you need to go and buy a ticket like now or whatever, or
Yeah.
they force them to do something. I'm not quite sure how they enforce that. I do remember one time riding the light rail from downtown Baltimore over to a light rail station, and I was sitting in the train waiting for it to move, and I'm looking around, and there must have been 20 light rail employees hanging around outside that station. I don't know what the
Mm.
heck they were doing,
Huh.
but
Yeah.
they weren't working. I don't know if they were
Yeah.
off, going up, but it's one of those things just like, okay, why are all these employees gathered around, exactly? And are they on the clock? Are they off the clock? This seems a
Yeah.
little, just seems so wasteful. I know that people, when I rode it in the Santa Clara, California area, I know people didn't pay to get on there.
Yeah.
I saw a little bit of enforcement in Minneapolis, and I remember no enforcement whatsoever in Phoenix when I went to another NRA convention. Also, like the other thing, because of that, the way the stations were designed, since you basically are supposed to buy a ticket, get on, and do that, and it also allowed homeless people to ride
Mm.
the train almost endlessly unless a transit cop decided to do something about it. Because I remember getting on a train in Phoenix, and then there was a stench, and I look
Uh,
around and I see somebody at the end of the car, and I'm like, I'm getting off at the next station, and I
yeah.
will, or I'm getting off and I'm going to change cars because I cannot ride, in this cabin for several miles or whatever it was with that
Yeah.
smell, just it was choking me. So
Yeah.
there's and if you're doing that, it's like, where are the revenues coming from? If people are supposed to buy tickets but they don't buy tickets, and there's all these free riders, it's just like, how much of a boondoggle? How much money are you spending on this? And, so I really have a problem with the Maryland light rail, or Purple Line. Uh, Governor Hogan caved in to the liberals who wanted that thing for a long time, and it's still going on. They're still building it out, and they've had numerous companies, contractors working on it that have given up or gone bankrupt, turned back the contracts,
Yeah.
forcing the state to look for others. So it's just like the cost overrun on this thing has been enormous. uh,
Yeah.
so and I don't know what all the details were on the Silver Line, but they never build it for what they say they're going to build it for, right?
Oh yeah. No, it never works out that way. I don't exactly know why, but there's always cost overruns. The biggest being cost overruns or boondoggle would have been, you remember when we were young, the Big Dig in Boston. Remember that? That was going on for years. There was a
That
guy.
became a running joke.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a guy. It was Peter Flaherty, but when I was at NET, maybe I'm wrong. It wasn't him, but he or someone would come on all the time and talk about the Big Dig. And but I guess that was pushed. I don't know if it goes all the way back to Tip O'Neill's day or not, but they had powerful politicians that pushed for that. Now I don't drive in Boston, so I've never been on it, but I hear that it's didn't make it much better, really, and it was just a big, huge cost. So,
Yeah,
uh,
that's the thing. I mean, I've been up to Boston. I mean, I haven't driven it myself, but you know, I've been around. You can walk, you can just kind of observe the traffic, and you're just like, so it doesn't look any better than it did any other time I visited Boston. It still
yeah,
like so it looks like it's just traffic choked. And I mean that's from city to city to city. It's just that there's a huge amount of traffic on the roads. And I think governments have struggled to find a way to take that traffic off the road. Excuse me. But in a day and age of when people are working from home,
yeah,
it's really hard to get mass transit to work. I
yeah.
think
Well, it's
I don't
also
know what
that's by the
I
way.
don't know what it costs in Japan and Korea to run their train systems, their subways and their trains.
Yeah.
But I will say, for at least they're highly efficient. I don't know if they're cost effective, but they're
Yeah.
highly efficient.
Well, the other thing is the sort of the death spiral because as more people stay home and don't use it, they're going to still need money and they still have to run it. And if you don't have the people, the fares, it just goes right down.
Yeah,
Um,
isn't Metro raising their fares again or something like that?
I
And
think so. Yeah.
because they're trying to plug some of that budget hole. The rest, they hope
Yeah.
that DC, Maryland, Virginia will kick in the rest and everything like this. But they had promised, I think a few years ago, that they were shooting for rate stability, fare stability, but it's just not going to happen. Um, not particularly when you're so employee intensive. If you've got all this manpower,
Yeah.
working behind the scenes, doing things, and if you know, maybe what we need is Elon Musk to go in there and say, "Look, I can you know, let me take a look at your automation, and we'll apply a version of full self-driving to the train stations." Because one of the things that was always maddening to me compared to Asia was that
Yeah.
you never knew where the train was really going to stop. If you stood there, are you going to line up at the door, and it would never be the same. You thought you might have had it figured out, but the train
Yeah.
operators always change. If you're in Asia, and I don't know, if I can't remember if the tube runs the same way in the UK, but they're numbered, right? The platform has numbers, and you line up in these numbers in these areas, and that's exactly where the train stops, the doors stop. So that's where people get off and people get on, and so you know
Yeah.
exactly what's going on, which also I think creates a more efficient, system for them. People kind of know, and I don't think they're quite as rude as people here in getting on and off. It's kind of a
Yeah.
dogfight to get on and
Yeah.
off the train here, and
That's
it
true.
it can be a little crazy in Asia, and they can crowd the trains a lot. But as much as they do that, it's still pretty darn orderly
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
Absolutely. I think, and in DC, in fairness, I remember people would wait for you to get off. When I was in London, I did ride the tube once. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it wasn't London where I noticed this, but they weren't rude about it. But people wouldn't wait. They'd just be coming and going at the same time. They wouldn't, like in Washington, they'll stand back and they let you go. But
Yeah,
that's
you gotta let people off the train,
yeah,
okay?
yeah,
Please let them off the train. Is fight trying to get on when they get off is only gonna muck up the system even more than it already is
yeah.
and
I
everything.
remember many times, not that I was bruised, but you'd be bumping around as you're going in and smacking into people. Um,
Yeah,
but
it's I remember, I don't know how many times I used to take the train. How many? It's been a number of years since I took in a Nationals game, but when you
yeah,
leave there and get at the Navy Yard, there's just this incredible swell of people,
yeah,
and so you're doing your best to hope. You want to A, get on the train. B, if you win the lottery, you'll actually get a seat, so that you're not like getting jostled the entire time, because the trains don't, trains stop and start, and that's not always a smooth type of a thing. But it did remind me of my son and I we took a game in at Yankee Stadium once many years ago, and when people leave Yankee Stadium, and I'm sure it happens with other, if they're mass transit by other stadiums, is that you just get this enormous crush of people, and then you're thinking like you're in New York. This is
yeah,
these people don't wait for anything,
yeah. The
and
thing
all
I
that.
just, yeah, in terms of seating, the thing is, it's sort of the unfairness of life. But if you're a pretty woman, someone's always going to offer their seat. Don't you
Hey,
think?
you're sexist.
I once made that point, and somebody said that that's not the way it should be. If it's an older woman, then elderly woman or something, then you offer seat, or someone has a physical handicap. But I just think the good-looking
I'm old
woman's
enough
probably
now.
always going to get a seat.
I could probably dress up as an old lady and see if I get preference.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I mean, I would offer the seat to someone who was older or older or pretty. I usually would offer offer the seat, but yeah, no, I haven't ridden the metro in a while. I try to avoid it if I can, but it is what it is. I mean, you need the system, but I don't know that it's all that economical, especially with more people staying home now. It's just going to be. It's like the older sort of technology. It's like the 20th century sort of thing. Now people aren't commuting like we used to. The traffic patterns are all different. But wasn't there something? What was it called that Musk was working on? You reminded me of Musk, that he had a sort of train system. I forgot what it was called or something in mind where it was
Well,
very energy
so
efficient.
so so Elon owns or operates several companies, right? And one
Uh-huh.
of them is the Boring Company, Boring. And so they have a test track under
Okay.
Las Vegas.
Okay.
Um, and so they bored a tunnel under
Mhm.
part of Las Vegas, and they can whisk you away. I think right now what they're doing is that I think you actually get in some kind of you may get in a Tesla or whatever. Anyway, you get in there, but because it's not running on the streets of Vegas, it's like you get in there and go whoosh, and
Yes.
you're at the next stop or whatever. But it
Yeah.
only run. I think the whole thing is only a mile or two long, so it's
Okay.
not. It's an experimental thing because you can imagine it's a little pie in the sky because it costs a ton of money to
Yeah.
tunnel anywhere, right?
Mhm.
So that's part of the problem. But I mean, Elon will, if he could get government subsidies to do this, he'll be
Yeah.
fine because that's how he built Tesla. Is on that whole premise of all those rebates and everything. This, Solar City, and then the Tesla cars. He looks at that. SpaceX. He's got lots of government contracts. So he's doing an AI thing now too. It's
Yeah.
he's running so many companies. It's kind of like he runs X or Twitter.
Yeah.
How many companies can this guy run and actually give any one of them the attention they deserve to run and
Yeah.
everything?
Well, I wouldn't sell him short. He's
No, I
doing
don't.
very well.
And I'm
Yeah.
going to say, I mean, you've seen the cyber trucks around, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought, man, what kind of a big, ugly vehicle this is. But I was looking last night and I found a Cybertruck review done by no other than Tucker Carlson.
Mm.
So I haven't watched anything of Tucker Carlson since he left Fox, but he's
Yeah.
got his little Tucker Carlson network, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And he was in Maine, where I guess he's got a place, and he got one of his neighbors, somebody he knows really well, who owns a farm and whatever up there, to kind of run the Cybertruck. He obtained a Cybertruck from Tesla, and to run the Cybertruck through the paces up in this area in Maine.
Hmm.
And I will tell you, it was pretty funny. It was actually pretty impressive for what they were able to do there because um, they hooked up a trailer and the guy loaded a bunch of dirt into the trailer and then tried to say, okay, so Tucker was asking me, he says, so how does this compare to your pickup truck, hauling this? And since he had studied it a little bit, he kind of knew what he had to do to run but they were getting a pretty smooth ride. It hauled the trailer just fine.
Mm.
They did all kinds of different tests on it. They crossed like some kind of a stream or whatever. So, but before they entered it, he he presses a button on the dash, and I guess there's a mode for something like that, and
Mm.
it raises the truck.
Hmm. Wow.
And so you can go through it and you just slice right through it, where a normal car or a normal pickup would have a little tougher time. Definitely a car. Pickup, still be a little bit dicey. But the truck, Cybertruck just cut right through that. He
Mm.
did a bunch of like donut kind of things in a dirt area, muddy area, and they were
Wow.
just testing it out. Test out the speed and all this. So I have to say, I mean, if I was a wealthy individual, that'd be a fun toy
Yeah, that's true.
to have. I don't know how many of those things he's going to sell, but I can understand a little bit more about the lure of a Cybertruck if you want this as kind of a little plaything or toy. And Tucker ran this. They ran it through the paces, and I'll say I think it passed pretty well. So
Wow.
you never know. I mean, I never would have watched Tucker otherwise. I don't think.
Yeah, well, it's true. Yeah, Musk, I got a lot of respect for him. He's very, 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 very smart guy and pretty much an innovator, almost like Steve Jobs, like that. But I think he's taken it to a higher level, but kind of the innovator.
Yeah, Musk really is a
Yeah,
genius at what he does, right? I
yeah,
mean,
he is.
I
Yeah,
mean, he's received a lot of criticism over the years, and he can be a little mercurial on things, but
Yeah.
he's really pretty smart, and he's someone you can listen to. I mean, I don't know that his interview with Trump was all that great or anything like that, but the two of them seem to hit it off. And Musk is definitely kind of the libertarianish guy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and definitely doesn't, he's going after the woke agenda,
Yeah. The
you know,
woke mind virus. That's good.
woke mind virus. I mean, he
Yeah.
talks about his own personal experience with one of his kids for gender
Yes.
assignment. So,
Yeah.
he went from being a darling of the left to
Yeah.
someone they hate, right?
Just think about it. He made the electric car work. I didn't think it could, to be honest with you, but
Right. Yeah.
Tesla and Elon Musk made it work.
Yeah. I mean,
So
I wish I had put money into Tesla stock when it came out, because
yeah,
I thought that was just sheer lunacy.
yeah, I did
That
too.
you
Yeah,
couldn't do that. Um,
yeah, I
our
agree.
our good friend out here in Montgomery County, Marcus Alzona has. I think he took he drove a cyber truck to the RNC convention in Milwaukee, uh, and I think he still has a Tesla sedan of some sort. So he's
Hmm.
a big Tesla fan. I think and he's kind of an engineering type guy. I think he can tell you all the ins and outs of everything. But yeah, I mean, Musk is a genius, and people need to give him recognition for that.
Yeah,
But because now that he's really waded heavily into politics, he's
yeah,
getting pilloried by the left. But I
yeah,
noticed that, you know, I think it's only emboldened him. His tweets seem to pop up more in my feed than they used to, and they just, just like they just kind of crack me up, because it's like he's saying things a lot of people won't say. Uh,
yeah. My favorite of all of his was my pronouns are prosecute Fauci. Prosecute Fauci now. Yeah. So
that whole thing about pronouns, about how people want to be identified as, that drives me nuts,
yeah.
because I'm reading articles. I'll read an article in the Wall Street Journal, and they'll do a story, be doing a story about somebody, and they said this person's pronouns are this, right? And they lay
Yeah.
them out at the beginning, and then from then on, the article refers to those pronouns.
Yeah.
But it gets a little confusing, because they switch the pronouns intermittently in the article, right? They don't use the same pronoun. So if the person has like four pronouns they can be identified with, the odds are that at least three of them will be used in the article. And
Mhm.
so I'm trying to read this article, and I'm like, I'm getting really confused.
Yeah.
It was a he, it's a she, it's a her. What? Wait a minute, where are we now? It's a they. What? You know,
Yeah.
they just kind of switch these up, and I'm like, okay, look, if you're going to use these stupid pronouns instead of your actual gender,
Yeah.
identification, can the writer at least use the same pronoun throughout the article? Be consistent and not quick, not switch them. I find
Yeah.
to me, I find that it only adds more lunacy to the whole idea that I'm only going to be identified under these pronouns, or my preferred pronouns are. Please.
Yeah, it just deals with, I guess, normalization of, the social contagion of they, them, him, he, her, she. So
Yeah, you and I are just too old for this.
I think so. Yeah, maybe that's. I noticed that more and more. I keep going back to this. I preface things with when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and when I was a kid, for example, they used to use this line that politics stops at the schoolhouse door. But you see now, politics has entered the door, gone to the boys' room, and placed tampons there. That's what's happened. Um, so it's all political. Now, granted, I mean the Democrats, when they said, back in the '90s and all, that politics should stop at the schoolhouse door, they didn't really mean it, but at least they would go out and say such a thing. But now it's just so overrun that um, I mean, it's nothing short of North Korean style indoctrination. Well, there is that case of that girl from North Korea that came to a Fairfax County public school. She escaped North Korea, and her family got out. And she was in a Fairfax County public school. She said it was every bit as bad, the indoctrination. I believe it. I believe it. It was bad when I was a kid, but nothing probably like today.
Yeah,
So
that's kind of interesting, because you think, okay, I just escaped one of the worst places in the world where all they do is indoctrinate you.
Yeah.
I come
Yeah.
to America, the land of the free, the home of the brave, and I get into a public school system, and it's in English, but it's the English version of what I just faced in my home country. It's like,
Yeah.
what the heck is going on here? Who are these
Yeah.
people and why is this happening to me? Uh,
Yeah. And the North Koreans probably weren't near as big on the whole gender ideology which is being pushed in the
Yeah,
school.
I don't think that's their thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we've seen enough in our time that, the focus there has been more about, the great leader and whatever, and
Yeah.
just kind of show a bunch of propaganda about the government, how great the government is and the system is and whatnot, and they don't get into those peripheral issues. Whereas
Yeah.
today, it's all over the map, and everything like that. So, I mean, you're mentioning the tampons in the boys' room. So that's a Tim Walz,
Yeah.
deal, right, in Minnesota. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know how you run away from that. I don't know if he is really trying to run away from that exactly.
Yeah.
Though I think there have been some people who've been trying to explain that away a little bit. But what burns me up right now is that so we see Kamala Harris doing well in the polls. So we're 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks now since Joe Biden, was in essence forced out of the reelection of the
Yeah.
campaign and basically had to turn it over to Kamala. So
Yeah.
as Dwight would say, it's like this is what kind of these people talk about Trump and the lack of democracy and democracy being threatened, if Trump returns to office. And as Dwight has said, no one voted for Kamala for this, right?
Yeah.
She didn't win, and she got bumped off in the primary, and before the last time around, she was
Yeah.
there's no ballot for her this time around per se. This is all for Joe Biden, really, right? And
Yeah.
so nobody's voting for her this time. They string together this convoluted electronic voting so they can make sure they get her on the ballot in all the states. Uh, so what happens starting this coming week, this next week. Voting, has voting for the candidate, voting for the nominee is a big part of a national convention. Are they going to go through the motions and do that just to recreate that? Or they skip that part of it somehow? I mean, there won't be any drama in it, if it's already a
Yeah.
done deal. But
Yeah.
there's nothing. There's that part of that element of things is just not there. I look at the convention as being somewhat anticlimactic, but they're going to roll out the liberal stars. Kamala and Walz will have to give speeches. I think I'm betting that Walz's speech will probably be better than hers.
Yeah.
Um, I think he's a better speaker than she is. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a high risk that she will get into a word salad, even with a teleprompter. That she will do that.
Yeah.
So that will be a problem for her. Um, but
Well, is
She's riding high right now. I don't know how much more of a bump can she get from the convention, or is the convention kind of the last gasp, and then this last, we're at 80, we'll be at like 73 next week. By the time the convention ends, for those last, 73 days, how much how much will the campaign change poll wise?
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're right. I mean, I don't think she's going to get that much more of a bump. The bump has already been taking place the last 3 weeks. And actually, maybe it doesn't get any more bump after the convention because now she'll start speaking. And part of the reason I think she got such a bump is you didn't hear much from her. So now you start hearing much from her, or she takes some sort of position, and that it could only maybe subtract. I'm wondering, is Biden speaking at the convention? Do you know? I mean, I assume he would. He's a sitting
That's a good
president.
question. I didn't look that up. They spoke together, yesterday in Maryland, I guess it
Oh,
was.
that's right. That's right. Yeah. So I
So,
guess he likes her enough that he would do it, but um, apparently he's not happy with Pelosi or Obama. Is Obama speaking? I assume he is.
yeah, isn't that's another little line of intrigue along the way, right? About how these other people, basically became the machine to force him out,
Yeah,
to do this.
and
And
it's
look,
all
go ahead.
it's almost Orwellian when I heard the other day in they had well, I guess they'll recreate that for the convention. And she finally, so and so delegation puts her over the top. Well, the thing I'm putting her over the top is they didn't vote. She didn't get any votes. But these are delegates that are pledged to Biden, then now that pledged to her. So
And
ordinarily, yeah.
yeah, and of course, in that vein, if they do that, they have to arrange it so it's California doing it, her home state.
Okay.
That's usually the tradition, is
All
that they
right.
usually try to get the home state of the presidential nominee to
Mm,
cast the deciding votes to put them over the top.
yeah.
So I don't know. The whole thing's going to be rather convoluted. Um, I don't know. I mean, it won't have much drama. I mean, actually, the biggest drama on this will be the fact that there a lot of groups that'll be out there protesting. You know,
That's true. Yeah.
Harris has got a very tricky situation here because of the situation in Israel.
Yeah.
There are a lot of pro Hamas, demonstrators that are going to be in Chicago, and they have permits and whatnot.
Yeah.
Chicago is, they're putting up the fences and all the barricades and whatever around the United Center, and so they're prepping just in case these people kind of get out of control. They don't want to think about 1968 Chicago again or anything like this. But when you look at what's happened on some of the college campuses, Columbia, UCLA, and things like that, is that some of these protests, have had a little bit of a Vietnam, war type of tinge to it, where, Columbia, Columbia in the spring, a bunch of these protesters, they got into a building and they took it over for about a day,
Yeah. I remember. Yeah.
and they hung banners. They covered up the windows. They broke in. They hung banners and they did all this kind of stuff before the president finally called in the NYPD to say, "Can you go arrest some people?" And they arrested like 50 people.
Yeah. And
But there were hundreds in the building.
as I recall, they were demanding food deliveries.
Yeah, no, yeah. Matter of fact, I was looking today because I was putting together our campus report, and I was, and the president of Columbia has just resigned.
Yeah.
Classes are about to begin. They're going to begin right after Labor Day, and now she resigns. Right?
Yeah.
She doesn't resign during the semester of when things were going bad. She doesn't resign early in the summer. She waits till like 3 weeks before the semester begins, and then she resigns. So they've got an
Yeah.
interim president. But you see these pictures from like the Columbia, and they set up a pulley system like with the milk crates, and they would just lower them down, put stuff in them, and send them back up.
Man. But
Unbelievable. You
well,
know
and also the expulsions. I don't know. They expel anybody for it or
that the expulsions. That's a good point. There's been very few expulsions. I mean, even in the out of the people they arrested, for which there were several people they arrested in Columbia who stormed the hall and barricaded themselves in this Hamilton Hall, almost all of them had their charges dismissed, the charge of trespassing, and then dismissed. Lack of evidence or whatever, kind of a thing like that. Kind of the standard thing. They slap them on the wrist, let them go. Well, they're going to come back and do it again. I mean, that's a slap on the wrist. What prevents them from doing it again? I mean, we have we have these colleges, universities here in the next few weeks. They're going to begin classes again.
yeah.
Those students who've been home over the summer, maybe they've been doing internships, maybe they've gone on vacation. But I think there was an article, maybe been in the journal or somewhere, saying that there has been some like workshops on the demonstrations with these people, getting new techniques down or trying to expand their base so they can come back to school and protest some more. I mean, a judge, I think UCLA or something like that is, they're trying to clamp down on things. UCLA they just got an injunction against them. I hadn't seen this before until I saw the ruling, but this judge issued a ruling, that from 3 Jewish students who accused the school of allowing a Jewish, a Jewish free zone basically to exist on the campus
Oh, wow.
late in the semester. according to this, those pro-Hamas demonstrators had set up all these metal barricades, and in order to get through the barricades so you can cross campus, you had to swear allegiance to basically the Palestinian cause. Now, what
Wow.
Jewish person is going to do that? And then they would give
Yeah.
you a wristband. It's like, okay, I've got a wristband. I passed the test or whatever, and so
Wow.
they sued, and they won in the sense that the judge said you can't do that. If you're going to allow that, then you have to basically do that for the entire university, that no student can cross or whatever. And the
Yeah.
school was like, well, the government shouldn't be involved, in a campus issue. And the judge didn't issue a remedy, but he was just saying that this whole thing was unconscionable. What they did was forcing Jewish students to swear allegiance to something they don't believe in, right?
Yeah.
That was an affront. And to me, the school coming back and talking about, the government should be involved in this. Look, to me, if you had done your job to begin with, this would never have happened, right? If you
Yeah.
had actually enforced, some safety rules on campus, if you had allowed this, protect the Jewish students and made sure that they were able to get to their classes, get to their finals, they weren't going to get harassed, and things like that, this wouldn't have been an issue. But no, UCLA did it. Columbia had that problem. Columbia, I think, I think she was really forced out in essence because she let those students, take over Hamilton Hall and then
Mm.
tried to get them out of there. And then realizing that they weren't leaving anytime soon, sent the police in. But by that time, they'd already done a lot of damage, right?
Yeah.
And everything like that. So, she could have stopped at the beginning. They were reacting to the fact that the one good thing she may have done here was that she had refused to cave into their demand to divest, from Israel, Columbia University investments, because that was also an underlying theme of a lot of these protests in these places, is that they were trying to revive the boycott, divest, sanctions movement, which had been pretty quiet and really hasn't gone anywhere. But
Yeah.
they're trying to leverage BDS and the whole Gaza thing to try to put pressure on the universities to get rid of any investments they had in any Israeli companies or any companies that did business with Israel. And it's like,
Mhm.
sorry, that's not don't no, that's it. Especially when you have Jewish donors to some major colleges, they're like, no, Bill Ackman, big liberal, big investor, he was
Yeah.
he was pretty ticked off. So
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
so,
he's
so
good. I think he's endorsed Trump too, Ackman.
yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean,
Yes, yes.
it's interesting. We've seen some of a pendulum, kind of a shift as a result of
Yeah.
this, where that woke mind virus, as you mentioned before, of Elon
Mhm.
Musk. People,
Yeah.
even some liberals have they woke up and they're like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on here? I
Yeah.
never thought this was going to be happening at my college, university, and in the United States of America. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
I thought we buried that that kind of activity 50 years ago.
Yeah. And John Huntsman was good too at UPenn. I think he also cut off family money, the
Yeah.
Huntsman. So, but
Yeah. So there's so much. Now you mentioned one of the things you're talking to about was policies. So Kamala she spoke and addressed some of her economic policies today, I guess.
mm,
One of them being that, in essence, is that, try to she wants to curb the price gouging by these greedy major corporations, and that, as if that was going to bring down inflation and everybody
yeah.
was going to be very happy. uh, but there are liberals that have reacted to this immediately saying, like, wait a minute, this is communism.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely, and I'll make it worse because if you put price controls on things, what happens? You're going to produce less. If you say to the grocery store you can only have 5% increase over a certain period of time, well, they're going to go out of business really because if they can't make a profit, if you grow avocados or apples and they say, well, or eggs, say, well, you're limited in your increases, you're going to get less being to be produced because then it becomes there's no money in it. So price controls never work. It always creates shortages and then ultimately leads to famine. But the difference is that when I was a kid, the left, like the Michael Dukakis's, the Walter Mondales, or certainly Bill Clinton, they would pretend to understand economics and operate under rational economic theory. She doesn't, but they don't really care anymore because they feel they know best, and they don't need to study your economic laws created by capitalists. They don't believe that, and so now I admit I didn't hear her speech, but just generally the views that I'm hearing are what she wants to do. Um, she doesn't know anything about economics. So she
Yeah.
doesn't get it. Biden's the same way. When he came up with this silly notion of shrinkflation, there's no such thing. Either they sell you the potato chips, the same size bag at a higher price, or if you like the old price, that's fine. And they'll shrink the bag if you really like that old price. But it has nothing to do with the cost. The cost of the potato chips deals with potatoes. They don't control the cost of potatoes. They buy the potatoes and make the potato chips. So the shrinkflation thing's nonsense. It's still the same thing. It costs more to
Yeah,
produce each chip.
that's a good point. I mean, where in the heck did that word come from anyway? I've heard that forever, it seems.
I don't know. They make it up. Maybe it sounds clever, and it sounds like you really sympathize with someone when they're really victimized by inflation, which is really your policies. It has nothing to do with the potato maker, or the chip maker, or the grocery store. It doesn't really have anything to do with them.
Yeah, I
So
mean, like, neither you or I or anybody else out there, wants to pay more for less.
right,
Compared. I mean, the price of a lot of a lot of the basics are up what 19-20%.
yeah,
Since Biden took office, and
yep,
that's a fact. You can't get away from that. And so
yeah,
there's a whole new baseline of where the costs are, and we're not going back. 3 years in time. The prices are not going to go back. To that point in time. If Kamala Harris thinks that price controls will return us to 2019, 2020 prices or 2021 prices, whatever,
mm-hmm.
she's really off her rocker.
Yeah,
She really doesn't know what she's talking about. I,
yeah,
and so like my wife will, she notices these things, and I notice a little bit, but not as much. I think the first time I ever really, well, a couple of things I remember in the past of being aware of where inflation, even when it was moderate, right? Even when it was only at 2% or whatever, was ice cream used to be what the tubs used to be, weren't they like 64 ounces, right?
yeah,
And now they're down to 48, but you're still
mm,
paying at least as much, if not more, right?
yeah.
They gradually the package size gradually got smaller while the price
It's,
held steady.
yeah. Yeah, it's like the size of a Big Mac, the size of a Whopper. It's the same thing, you know.
Big Mac. I don't know how you can call that a Big Mac anymore
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we've done some of those 2-for-1 deals, and my wife will
yeah,
look at it and she goes, "What happened to this sandwich?"
yeah. That's right.
Because using your phrase, when I was a kid, it was a
Yeah,
lot bigger.
yeah. Well, remember Clara Peller's line, "Where's the beef?"
Yeah, no, I mean that's definitely very apropos in today's world for that.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, just things you wouldn't think of. I mean, my wife had gone. She went out and she stocked up on paper goods, kind of during the pandemic, making sure we always had a lot of toilet paper and paper towels and stuff like that. And we're
yeah,
still working through that supply. I think she added to a little bit since then, but I have this pile of stuff. So, Costco is kind of our go-to place. And so she has the old Costco uh, package of toilet paper, and there were 30 rolls in there, and or something like that. And I don't know how many rolls square foot or whatever. And on top of those now are the newer ones, which are like 24 rolls, and they're smaller or something.
yeah,
And it's like, yeah, it's like I just remember, when I was younger, and during, growing up during, the Carter years, that
yeah,
the idea of when you go to the store is like, if something was on sale, buy a lot of it now because the next time you see it, it'll cost you a lot more. So we
yeah,
we were always chasing after these goods. We're like, okay, I've got to buy 10 of these now because it'll cost me, an extra 10% if I wait 3 months and buy them later or something
yeah,
like that. I mean, inflation was just so ridiculous back in the mid 70s, right? And
yeah.
early. until things finally started to get turned around. We saw this huge pop here, and it kind of made me feel a sense of deja vu that I'm like, am I going through the same thing again? Am I going to have to do
Mhm.
that? But there has been very little that hasn't been touched by inflation, you know, and input costs have gone up. And whether or
Yeah.
not you want to get your car repaired, you want to buy your basics, whatever it is, Dwight always holds up the cookies or the M&Ms and stuff like that. All this stuff costs a lot more money, or you get a lot, or it's the same price and the packages are smaller. So
Yeah, it's one and the same, and you know, the government claiming price gouging is not nonsense. It's not price gouging. Prices are getting higher because the stores have to pay more to buy their product to then sell. And if government comes in and limits landlords or limits grocery stores or limits gas price increases, you create shortages. And I mean, then where are you going to get? And the stores go out of business. Where are you going to go for your food? Where are they going to
yeah,
stop making certain things? So she doesn't know anything about economics, but or maybe she does and she knows it's nonsense, but it helps her politically with the base, and they don't care about economics either. They just see it some greedy businessman's making them pay more. That's just kind of the way they see it.
that's a
And I
very
don't know how.
that's a very Elizabeth Warren type of thing, right?
Yeah, and I don't know how you talk sense into people after being indoctrinated for 12 years in school and then being indoctrinated in the colleges. I don't know how you talk sense into them. It's just sort of it'd be a difficult thing. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I think her poll numbers are inflated in a sense, kind of like inflation, but I think they'll come down once she starts taking more positions. But if she can remain a Biden basement strategy, maybe she can pull that off that way. But I just think eventually people are going to want to have answers. The other thing that concerns me is that with the early voting, you realize that in Virginia and some other states, they're going to start voting uh, towards the end of September. So you could have as early voting as the September. So she leaves the convention. She's still going to be on a high. And in just a few more weeks, you got people voting again or starting to vote. Not in every state, but I think Virginia, we're like one of the earliest states. And
Yeah, I think North Carolina is going to mail out their ballots on September 6th.
oh my God.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, you're exactly right. That's an excellent point of something I was going to get to eventually, hopefully, which was just that. So we have all these things coming down the pike, but it, once the ballots start going out for early voting and and things like that,
Yeah.
then that's the other part of this race. The calendar may say you've got 75 days or whatever it is, but in
Yeah.
reality you have far less because votes are going to go start getting locked in early. So
Yeah.
if you're trying to convince a sliver of voters, I think the base on the Trump side and the Harris side are locked in, and there's a group of people that may be undecided still, for this.
Yeah.
And Harris is dealing with a lot of enthusiasm because it's um, in 2020 you vote for Biden because he's not Trump. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of them. In 2024, if you're voting for Harris, it's kind of like you're voting for Harris because she's not Biden,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's so nuts. You're voting for the Democrat because she's not the other Democrat. Uh,
Yeah.
but that's kind of what it is. And she's in the whole thing. It's like, what's her message? Joy, right? I don't
Yeah.
know if you've seen those posters of her with the whole. You remember the Obama posters? Now it's Harris posters, and it says "joy" on them.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh, I don't know how much more of this I can take in my life. This
Yeah.
is
Well,
unbelievable. But
and
but
nothing to be joyful about, really. The Biden Harris team has been horrible. She's no different, really, than him. You could argue, well, she's a different race, different gender, and compos mentis. I agree, but the policies are still the same. And people, because of identity politics and intersectionality, I don't think they realize that it's the same thing. Um, Barack Obama had the same policies, more of a Jimmy Carter or a Bill Clinton. It was just he looked different, and that's fine. He looked different, but it was still the same policies. There's nothing really new just because of the way you look. And I don't know that people realize that. I think they just see, well, a black woman, isn't that wonderful? What a change. Well, not really any change. It's the same policies of Joe Biden. It's really his third term. I mean, she'll work harder, I'm sure. She'll be in the office more. She'll work more than 10 to 4 every day. But still, fundamentally, it's still the same warmed over sort of socialism.
Yeah, and you go back to her, this policy issue and how she doesn't know anything about economics. I think based on the way the Trump campaign has kind of foundered, during the last 3 weeks, they seem to have been thrown off their game. They
Yeah,
really had counted on running against Biden, and so their whole everything they had planned was to fight against Joe Biden, which was a pretty easy target, and
sure.
they really didn't have a lot ready to go against Harris. So
Yeah,
he's used a lot of personal attacks which aren't landing, at all, in my
yeah,
opinion. And doing all of this, you got to get off of that. And I mean, I think he made reference to that yesterday in the well, my advisors say I should not do this, but he goes ahead and does it.
yeah,
He goes and defies them. Now with Harris and the whole thing about this price control thing, well, that's a potential gift to the Trump campaign, because if Trump would go on issues, he could attack that. He says, do you really want this country to go there? I mean, Trump has already kind of said, she's going to wreck this country. Well,
yeah,
this is an example. This is how she would wreck this country. Do you want empty shelves, and lack of product, all these kinds of things? You will get that if she wins election and then tries to assert price controls, because we know how it works. Look at the Soviet Union. Look at a lot of countries around the world that that try to control these things, and look at the shortage of everything, and how the people suffered as a result of that. That's not a very difficult case to make. And just once again, things that the Biden administration did, Harris is part of that,
oh
right?
yeah,
You
absolutely.
can't run from that. You need to go and remind people that she is a part of all of these policies, all the Inflation Reduction Act, the camp, all the student loan forgiveness, which wasn't legal and constitutional, just all the spending, and how much they've run up the deficit, and how big budget deficits they've been running, over this time. Trump wasn't great on budget deficits and stuff like that, but it seems that the Republicans have had a little more religion on that lately than they did under the Trump years. Hopefully, they can keep some of that up to try to at least moderate their spending, going forward. Should Trump win, election, and the Republicans control the House, and if they can control the Senate. I mean, Harris is one of the things about Harris right now is that it could possibly change the down ballot races into a swing back to the Democrats, but we'll see. Maybe she's peaked. I hope she has peaked, and I
Yeah,
hope I hope Trump is getting his act together. I mean, we see Corey Lewandowski being hired, and he's not. I don't know if he's going to be on the same page with the current Trump advisors or something like that. I
yeah,
don't care. I know. I'm fine if Trump wants to be somewhat pugnacious, but just don't get into the don't call her like stupid, dumb, and question her race. Focus on the issues and what she's going to be like, and you can win. But
yeah,
he's just got to do that, and that's my only thing. That's why I kind of get worried about the debate. I think he can beat her in a debate, but I do kind of like it if the rules were the same as the Biden debate, because it
yeah,
it keeps Trump from going off, just
yeah,
off script. He stays, he had to stay more on script, and that was the better Trump. Uh,
yeah. I agree.
but
Yeah,
he's just got such an ego.
yeah. I think if he stays on the issues, he does well. He really does. And yeah, she. I think though, I think it's going to be downhill for her. I think the more she takes positions, then it gives us more. And remember, she is on with so many sound bites, but one is she said Bidenomics is working. So just keep playing that. Bidenomics is working, and things like that. Hammer her on that, and I think Trump will win. So we'll see what happens, but it's it's an interesting political year. I still think it's a dirty trick, though, to have one candidate win the primaries, become the nominee, and then you realize this guy stinks, which they always knew he was mentally impaired. But then when it gets out to decide he's too old, quote unquote, we got to get rid of him. And he's not too old. It was that he's mentally compromised and that he wasn't going to win. They looked at the polls. Larry Sabato, I remember early in the spring, he was calming the fears. He says, oh, it's early. Things will change. Economy improve. And the polls didn't change at all. And then after he has the horrible debate performance, they realize he's too old. We got to get someone else. So,
all right. So we are we're past time, but I think we've had a really good discussion tonight. And Dwight would hopefully Dwight is proud of us for having a tight discussion tonight.
Well, yeah, but there was no mention of Spiritiagna, nor was there mention of the Orioles.
You have to throw that out there, please do.
Nor was there a mention of a.
Actually, Dwight has not been mentioning Spiro as much as he used to. It seems.
Okay. Yeah.
But
the Maverick nabobs and negativity.
Yeah, and we'll also mention pizza. I'll just use the word pizza because that's also Dwight.
Yeah, that's right. Well, he has good taste in restaurants.
Whatever the best pizza place is in Maryland, I don't know. Dwight knows. And there's always more pizza. Every time I see a pizza joint opening, I make sure I send it to him. But he usually knows about it before I do. Yeah.
Well, I give Dwight credit. I thought Stained Glass Pub was good, and so the pizza was good. So.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody serves good pizza either. That's the thing. It's not something that they do well. So, good for that. A vote for Stained Glass Pub. Dwight will be happy with that. All right. So final thoughts. It's just the two of us. You get to go first.
Well, selling the book, of course. This week I did some more trips here, and I'll get you the details. I'm coming back to the state of Maryland next month. With a group there, so I'll give you the details on that later as soon as it gets finalized. But doing okay and enjoying the end of the summer here. It's getting a little cooler, so I'm happy about that. But otherwise, yeah, doing okay. I haven't been following the news quite as much. I'm not looking forward to next week because you can have all the convention stuff. But then I hope after that we can get to more serious time and. They'll start grilling, well, not even grilling, but even just questioning commie law because it's really getting embarrassing that they allow the Biden strategy of hiding. I just think that's amazing that, especially since one last thought, but the whole purpose of a primary system is for candidates to go to state. They talk to voters, they answer questions. It's called vetting. But she didn't get any of that. And on top of that, she doesn't even take questions. So I've never seen anything like this in my my life. But anyway, but that's about it. So I'll send it back to you.
All right. Yeah, I will. I'll give another vote to the weather. It's been a better August lately than normal, which is good. I was between the heat and humidity. That was not good for me at all. So I the lower the humidity, the lower the temperature, the better. Slightly cooler nights and mornings. So it's nice to have that for a change. It almost begins to feel a little fall like when it starts to do that. And once the humidity drops down, it will be fall at that point in time. So. I'll be happy for that. But I kept thinking, about the weather. I thought it'd kind of be nice to have a little like San Diego type of weather, or someplace where it doesn't really get cold and all that. I like the season changes, but as I get older, I can do without a lot of snow and ice. So if we can have a moderate winter, that would be very nice, and then get right into spring. So the clock is moving along and. Crossing my fingers that I like this whole, we don't wind up with President Kamala, as you were saying here. So I like that. That's so we'll see what happens. I mean, we just don't have that much time. I mean, like I said, with early voting coming up pretty soon, They're not going to be when they hold their debate. I mean, people will have already started receiving their ballots in some places,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
things will start things will start getting locked in. So it'll be interesting. Maybe the more interesting debate will be the VPs. Who knows
Yeah.
with all of that. Uh, I guess the only other things in here too is that Florida had announced that they now have 1 million more registered Republicans than Democrats,
That's good.
which is a huge swing. I mean, apparently, just a few years ago, wasn't that long ago that the Democrats had a 97,000 vote advantage. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, and then they're plus 1 million on the Republican side, so it's a huge swing.
Yeah.
Remember when Florida was definitely one of the swing states, and now it's pretty solidly red at this
Well,
point.
thanks
So
to Ron DeSantis. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and California continues to lose population and corporations
Yeah.
fleeing the state for just being overregulated and just out of control policies that are going on in place. So um, yeah, and I guess I'll just say the Olympics are now done. Congratulations to everything the U.S. has done. They did
Yeah.
a job. It's nice not to have the old Soviet Union around or even Russia around. So they usually pile up a bunch of medals, but they'd also usually do it with the help of a few extra helping of drugs of some sort. There was some controversy with some of the Chinese swimmers as to whether or not they had been doping. Um, and then there's the controversy over the boxers, and
Yeah.
and then Jordan Childs, our gymnast, won her. She went from fifth to third to get a medal, and now she's back to fifth and supposed to give back a medal. But it sounds like the IOC probably should have. The whole thing was they mucked it up. They could have found a better resolution to this, and they just
Yeah.
created a controversy where they didn't need to have one, and the whole thing's a
Well,
huge mess.
well, and remember you mentioned the old Soviet days. Remember when you had the East Germans, the accusation was men were on the East Germans women team. Well, now that's normal. That's what we're all doing.
Yeah, I watched the women's U.S. women's basketball team, and congratulations to both them and the men's team for winning.
I
Uh,
saw that. It was a good game. I did watch that. Yeah, I did.
yeah,
Both against France, right? They were both.
yeah, both against France. Yeah,
Well, that's interesting.
but I still had my questions about Brittany Griner.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I'll leave that be at this point in time. But boy, I don't know. I mean, if did you watch the men's game?
I didn't see the men's. I did watch the women's. Now that I think about it,
Okay,
but
yeah.
um,
So I was. What happened? I think I was out of the house briefly, and I came back, and so the U.S. was losing badly at the beginning of the game, the first half or three quarter, and then they took control.
yeah,
And so when I came home and I turned on, they were now in the fourth quarter, and it was still, I mean, it was still nip and tuck to a degree. I mean, this game, there was you couldn't tell which way it was go for sure, but Steph Curry, what he did in those final, what was it, 2 minutes or whatever, was just unbelievable. I mean, they talk about athletes with ice in their veins.
yeah,
This guy did it because to bury the shots that he buried, and then the last shot that he buried,
yeah.
with hands, two defenders up like this in his face, and to go over their extended arms,
Wow.
was just an amazing, shot. Um, his only Olympics, because at his age, he's probably not going to be back. I'll be curious to see what happens in 4 years from now because both, the men's team had some older players, the women's team had a few older players. They need to, see if they can reload. You notice the parity though across the world, where the U.S. could easily dominate these types of things before with their
That's
dream teams. We've got a lot of NBA players now playing for their home, their home
yeah.
countries, and it's not such an easy path to the gold medal game for them. So
Yeah,
we shall see.
that's the most amazing difference for me is how we used to so dominate basketball. Now it's competitive.
It's very
And
competitive.
remember, not to interrupt your time, but remember before we used professionals, our college all-stars, we still dominated basketball. It was us and the Soviets, and we almost always beat them, except,
Yeah,
of course, 72. I guess it was 72. That game, remember, where we was stolen by the
yeah.
refs. I think it was 72 or 76. I think it was 72.
It
So,
72 was in Munich. May have been that
well,
one.
remember, Tom McMillan was on that team. He's a Maryland guy.
Yeah.
Well, so it shows how competitive basketball's gotten, and baseball's gotten very competitive too now. And that's not Olympic sport so much, but
It'll be an Olympic sport in 2028 though.
okay, good, yeah.
But that's a whole nother thing too, David, because the question there is that because it's the Summer Olympics, right? The WNBA plays during the summer. They basically put the season on hold because so many of their players went to play for the Olympics, right? In the
Mm,
Olympics, they just resumed, I think, last night their season.
mm,
Major League Baseball, you know, are they going to interrupt their season at all? They're kind of tightly, they play 162 games a year with not a lot of extra space in between to get their entire schedule in. The Olympics goes on for a while, for 10 days, 2 weeks. Are they going to take some time off to allow their players to play in the Olympics? There's a lot of things going on right now. I mean, they're going to be in LA. It'd be kind of neat to see a professional all-star team, compete and play. I mean, I think the only reason that we have all these pros in there is that we were trying to level the playing field because we had spent all this time playing professional ball players in all these different sports from all these different countries.
yeah,
I think our amateurs, were great players, but
yeah,
but it would have been virtually impossible for college level players to beat France or to get
oh
to
yeah,
that level to go past Serbia. You know when
yeah,
they and our teams are at a disadvantage too because they're basically whipped together and are playing together for a very short period of time and then go to the Olympics. Most of the other teams, they might
yeah,
drop in a few NBA players, but the base of the core of the team, they've been playing together for years.
yeah.
So, there's an advantage going to the other side and all. Anyway, we have gone on, well, we're 17. That's not too bad tonight. Anyway, everybody, thanks a lot for joining us tonight. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you didn't miss Dwight too much.
Mm-mm.
Uh, well, we have another couple of shows, I guess, before he gets back. Anyway, whatever. Whenever he comes back, maybe he'll watch this episode on YouTube or whatever. But
Mm.
thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again next week.